Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. My name is Amy and I'm here with my co-host Gareth.
Hey everybody, how are you doing today, Amy?
Yeah, good. It's December and things are all coming to an end. Schools are closing and all those fun things.
Yeah, it's our kids finished school today for the year. Hey, that's it, eh?
That's
grade
it.
1 done, grade 6 done, grade 7 done.
Done.
New season ahead. What a year it's been. 2024, we started out saying this is the year of more, and it has in many ways. It's been the year of more. All kinds of things. We were taking some time this week to reflect on what's been, and I think it's so helpful for me just to look back over a year and almost go from the beginning. Hey, January this happened, February this happened, March this happened. What it does for me, it just allows me to step back a little bit and see the big picture of things. Sometimes I find if you're just in the details and the day-to-day, you miss like the grace thread of what's happened.
Yeah.
But when you take time to reflect and step back and see the whole big picture, you kind of are in awe of everything that's happened. How many things have happened?
I was listening to a story this week about a guy that got lost and in a shopping mall and was going round and round this shopping mall trying to find.
He got found at the end, right? So you could tell the story.
Yes.
Yes.
But in the shopping mall, they have those screens, and then you orientate yourself, and it has the little icon that says
like one of the maps. Like
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So like
Digital
in Mall of Africa or whatever, then
you.
it says you are here, and he was using the analogy of when you know where you are in the grand picture of everything, then you're able to locate and orientate what's going on around you. And as we close out a year, I always find it super helpful to go like, I'm here because these are the things that have happened throughout the year that have brought me to this point. And so then I can go into the next season kind of having orientated everything that's happened, filed it, I don't know, closed the loops in my brain.
Yeah.
That's how my mind works.
So I think the important thing there is that it's really helpful to actually take a little bit of time to sit down, maybe with a pen and paper or with a group of friends or something, and just reflect on the year and share some of the stories of the things that have happened.
Yeah, and we tend to rush from one season into the next.
Yeah, like often the focus is just what's coming next year, 2025 is coming, the year to thrive, the year to come alive. Let's get into that year already.
Yeah, and if we're going to learn anything from the experiences we've had, we actually have to take some time to sit with them.
There's a great question in that, and this is something we've used with our kids as well, and also with the staff team here at Free Church. Is we go through something, whatever experience it is, an event or through the exam season with kids or through sport or something, and then afterwards ask this question: what learning did we do? Like together as a collective, what have we learned through this? Because I think it's a great tragedy to go through something and come out the other side like unchanged. You haven't learned, you haven't taken time to think or just process and allow things to settle. So you're talking about asking this question really. In 2024, what learning did we do?
Yes. And I think that relates, you can relate it to like knowledge. So we learned about spiritual formation this year as a church.
Yeah, because right in the beginning of the year, we said 2024 is the year of more freedom, more faith, more formation, so apprenticeship in the way of Jesus.
And
so we've learned a lot about formation.
We've learned some head knowledge about formation, and we've allowed it to get into our hearts, and it's actually formed us. So now we need to say, okay, well, how do we move forward with that formation? So take the head knowledge, apply it to our lives, and then how do we take that into 2025 as an application?
Yeah. I think it's maybe building some foundational things. I mean, some people say that the longest journey is from your head to your heart. Like you hear things and they get into your head, but when it actually drops into your heart, it starts to shape you. But I would say that there's been a lot of application already.
Yes.
In my life and lives of others, looking around some of the stories we're sharing of different people that have taken courageous and bold decisions to deal with things in their life as they go on this journey of formation. I mean, decisions of like to get baptized in water, for example. I think it was about 28 or 30 people being baptized over the last while. It was just incredible, getting into their hearts and then making a stand to do something.
Yeah, and even if you think of things like child dedications, where people have actually said, "I'm going to raise my children in the ways of
Yeah, come
Jesus. There's been salvations where people have said, I'm tired of living my own way. I'm gonna choose to follow
Yeah.
Jesus. I'm gonna give him my everything. People joining life groups, people joining serve teams.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's one of the things we spoke about, right? Is that in the beginning of the year there was, I think there were 13 life groups in January this year, and now there are 22 life groups.
Amazing.
So the number of life groups has doubled. The number of people in life groups has doubled. The number of people coming out on Sundays is about 40%, 40% up on what it was last year on average. Went to double services this year.
We did.
We had 1001 days in November, Spring Day back in September when Rory and Mel joined us from 3CI. Gabe and Fee came from Life Changers Church in Cape Town. That was in October.
Yeah, we
So
celebrated
just
a
all these,
birthday.
like, incredible moments, yeah.
And that was with Richard and Jackson Gavin.
Yeah, that's right. Back in February, yeah, they came up for the 2-year birthday. We're almost at 3 years now.
Can you believe it? Yeah, and I think that there's also been hard things that have happened this year. There's been some loss, there's been some grief, there's been some diagnoses, there's been some people that we've said goodbye to, have moved cities or whatever.
Yeah.
And even in those moments, we have to take time to reflect and actually make sure that, like, have we processed? Are we processing? How are we doing? About the hard things too, not just the
That's really
highlights.
important. So it's often easy to remember the highlights, and then as opposed to rush over the tough things and not process them. But unprocessed trauma, loss, grief, those are things that they can catch up with you later if you don't take time to grieve, take time to mourn, or just to talk through things that have happened, the tough things that have happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm thinking the word memorial stones. It's like there's things that mark a year, good things and difficult things, or easy things and hard things, and if we take time to mark the year, over time we can say, oh, I see what God did in that year, even through the hard things. But if we just rush ahead, we actually lose the thread of seeing God's hand in our lives. We lose the ability to zoom out and see, wow, God, all through my life, you've been so faithful. But when we mark a year with, we say, okay, this happened and this happened and that happened, and we take a moment and we reflect, then we're always able to look back and see the grace of God through our lives.
Yeah.
So, and then we can sing those songs like we sing on Sundays, like, all my life you've been faithful. I can sing those songs because I've taken time, even in the hard years, even in the years that I say, that was the worst year of my life, I can still say, even in that year, God was faithful because I've taken time to process.
Yeah. So if I look back, not this year just gone, but the one before. So the one before 2023, that's the year when my mom went to be with Jesus. So that definitely marked the year for me. But it's also the year when I started to take running a little bit more seriously. So I did first marathon, some trail running,
First
comrades, and all those kind of things. So there's these mountaintop moments, but also there's pain associated with this year. So if you look back on the year of 24, what would you say for you marks this year?
I think that for me personally, 2024 has been a significant year. So there's been a lot of highlights. I got to travel to Doha with a bunch of ladies on a ministry trip. I've probably taken a whole lot of next steps within myself, but then God's also done deep work in me as we've done this journey of apprenticeship. So it's been significant highs and significant depths. That's growth and
you've
mining.
Had some really big moments in this year where they've been through various things. God speaks to you, does something in a moment, and something your worldview has shifted. And you've been changed through something. So it's I think that happens when we're prepared and committed to open ourselves up to formation and allow space for the Holy Spirit to. We invite him into work. He works.
I think
we sometimes surprised, oh my goodness, okay, this has happened, this has changed. Yeah.
And I don't know if people do this, but oftentimes we will pray at the end of a year for God to give us a word for the following year.
Yeah.
And God often does. So you can go into a year with a word like it's going to be a year of joy or whatever. And I'm realizing now as I close out the year that I'm naming a year retrospectively as well. So God gave me a promise for the year ahead, but now I can actually also name it retrospectively.
Yeah.
And it's both and.
Yeah.
So now as I close out 2024, I name it a significant year. But it's not
Yeah.
the word that I was given at the beginning.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think there have been transitions in the year. For me, it's been a year of transitions. So, like within the Free Church story, there's transition from one service to two. There's been, by God's grace, just incredible growth with people being added to the story. Like you said, some have moved, some have moved cities and so on. So some that started the journey with us have moved on. But there's just been like this influx of people. And one of the things which I'm deeply grateful for is many of those who've joined are not just, moving from another church. It's not like transfer growth, but actually there's people coming through the doors, beginning to grapple with the basics of faith. Not growing up in Christian homes, not having a background. So it's been like this shift and transition from primarily in the beginning being a community of people who know about Jesus, who follow Jesus, and now we're starting to see actually people who are outside of church starting to come in. So that's been a transition, and there's a shift needed to take place. So I think our staff team has transitioned.
Yeah,
We've had
hugely.
some people transition out. We've had more people transition in, so the staff team has grown. There's a different dynamic as well.
What's
And
really
it's
cool is we
been
were
incredible.
we were in a meeting this morning,
Yeah.
and our staff team, there's a buzz in the staff team as we prepare for Dream Team celebration,
coming.
and we're not part of that buzz, and it's quite cool to suddenly have a buzz in the office because now the team has grown so much. So that transition has been really fun.
Yeah. So it's lots of life, but each of those are transition shifts. Someone joins the team, and then there's new learnings, new coaching, cultures to be built and developed. So it's transition, parenting transitions. So our kids have hit the teenage and preteen years, so we're having to transition into be different kinds of parents, and I think all those transition moments are really key. We've spoken about transition moments before in the podcast, like how key they are. So like in a relay race, when in transition zone, when the baton is handed over, is absolutely critical. And earlier in the year, we saw like the US at the Olympics made a fail again in that. In a Sunday in a worship set, sometimes in between the songs, transition moments. Yeah, Leroy here behind the camera is laughing at us because he knows about that. Transition moments. Like transition moments can be done beautifully, or they can feel really awkward. Where everything just goes quiet and people that are there for the first time have like this awkward moment until the next song begins.
I think one of the transitions we've also seen is people going from being Christians by title to being disciples of Jesus, apprentices of Jesus.
Yes.
So as we've transitioned from maybe a lot of surface level Christianity to a depth of understanding as we've done the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
And that transition is so it's more subtle maybe, but it's becoming more obvious as we close out the year that transition is happening.
Yeah. And the other transition which we had within the team is we ordained elders into the local church story, so that was a transition as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I think 2024 it's not a unique word, but I think it's definitely been a year of different transitions into different spaces. And one of the things that we were speaking about this before is transitions shouldn't be rushed. Interesting in architecture as well. There's like the transition zones are called liminal zones. So that's the moment where you move between. Let's say you go to a shopping mall, you park your car, and between the parking lot and going into the mall, in that like staircase room, usually the parking ticket machines are there, or the elevators are there, or the escalators, whatever. Those are liminal spaces. They are spaces where you're not supposed to live in them. You move through them, but it's almost like a preparation season. So you don't rush through them, but when you're in them, you feel awkward. You're not in the parking lot, and you're not in the mall. You're like in this in-between space. So, and in life, we go through those liminal spaces. Sometimes we get stuck in them, It's like you can't find the way out. Or you go back to the parking lot instead of getting into the mall, or you just like sprint through it because you feel like, well,
it feels creepy.
Feels creepy, and if it's late at night, you're wondering like, is there someone hiding here? So you rush through it, but then you run the risk of like tripping or whatever it may be. So transitions are important, but the timing of transitions is absolutely key as well. is just to realize, okay, I'm in a transition, so things are going to be feeling a little awkward. And you can take that and apply that to any area of life, right?
Yeah.
If you're changing jobs, if you're moving from one grade to the next, or moving from studying to working, you're going to feel awkward in a transition season, and that's okay. You don't need to rush it, but be reflective on where you've come from, and don't just rush into what you're going to, but just like take your time and transition well. Don't rush it.
Yeah, it's like we're transitioning a child into high school. It's our first child going into high school. And I remember right at the beginning of the year, I spoke to Jackie Mungavin, and she has 7 children, so she's a helpful person to speak to
You've got
about
some
parenting.
experience and wisdom, and there we go.
So I spoke to her, I said, how do I do this? How do I transition? How do I make this transition? And she gave me this great advice of, you keep your toddlers kind of really close to you, and then you let them go a bit further and as they age. And now as they become teenagers, as they transition into high school, you have to actually loosen the apron string more yourself. Otherwise, it comes a point where they tear away, and then the tearing away is where the danger is. So actually start to release and let go, and you prepare yourself. And so now, this week that James is in Durban on a athletics camp, and I've been preparing my heart for this moment and preparing him for 6 months, because I've known it's coming.
Yeah.
And so that I don't feel the tearing, and he's not tearing, he's leaning in.
Although it still feels awkward.
It's awkward.
And it's different for us because there's many firsts in this.
Yes.
But you're right, there has been a preparation, and in fact, like one of those, remember we had a conversation about him and a phone. So in our household, it's been like, when you get to high school, then we will talk about you getting a phone. Now this athletics tours through things a little bit for us, so we had some advance warning, but we decided, okay, let's bring that marker forward a little bit and transition him into having a phone under our supervision before we just say, okay, you're going to high school,
Yeah,
here's
let
your
loose.
phone, off you go.
Yeah.
And that's been a journey of a few months, like with boundaries and restrictions, and where you can use the phone and all those kind of things. And hopefully we've done it like fairly okay.
Yeah. So far, I mean, God's grace has been with us, and we're still in that transition phase. But this week has been quite a key week in that transition phase, and it feels super awkward. Our house feels awkward. There's a child missing,
It's empty.
But he's thriving, and he's doing things he's not done before, and he's taking responsibility for things. And as a parent, I feel really proud.
Yeah.
But it is in an awkward space. So we go through all these transitions in life, and we have to lean into the awkward. We have to take it slow. We have to prepare. We have to acknowledge the emotions that are around it, all those big things. And so this is the transition we're in.
Yeah.
But you can apply it to any transition.
So
really.
I think that the most important thing of this is transitions will come.
Yeah.
They're going to feel awkward. Don't rush them, but prepare for them and live in the moment as you go through them. And it's okay, like you'll get through it.
Yeah. And some are quick transitions, and some are slower. And honestly, we can trust God to lead us in every transition.
Yeah.
So actually prepare your heart, prepare whatever needs to be prepared, and then wait on the Lord for the answer, for the next step, for the strategy, for the wisdom, for the grace.
So getting really practical as we wrap this up, what would be helpful I know you've got a process of how you reflect on the year gone and plan for the year ahead. So for those that are watching or listening, like what advice would you give? Okay, I want to take a bit of time to process the year that's been and give some thought to transitions that I've been through, and think about the year that's coming and what transitions may be coming and how I could prepare for those. So how would you go about that?
So I think the first thing is to actually acknowledge that we are going to transition, whatever it is, from one year to the next year is the transition we're making, and it may look different for everybody. But then to acknowledge that you need to make the transition, to actually reflect and plan, and then set aside some time to do that. Because in December we can fill our time with people and parties and holidays and whatever, but actually even in that, create a space to do the reflection. And then
so that could be like a day or a morning or a couple of hours or something, like you put it in your calendar, you say, this is when I'm going to take some time out to reflect and plan.
Yeah, I'm going to take myself out for coffee or whatever it is. And then for the last...
Introverts are loving that. Extroverts are like, oh, I got to take someone with. Could we do it together?
Well,
maybe?
you could in silence. I don't know if extroverts can do that, but
No, silence and solitude is big struggle for extroverts.
well, some people are verbal processors, so maybe it's helpful for people to say, okay, well, for me, I'm going to talk to my spouse about the highs and lows, or
Yeah.
I'm going to have coffee with a friend. But one of the things I've done for 4 or 5 years is I print out a thing called the Year Compass, and it's a booklet that has reflective questions in it. And then you sit with your diary or your calendar for the year and you reflect on the high and low moments of the
So
year.
it actually forces you in a way to go back through the year and to identify the high and low moments.
Yes, and then it
So
leads
here-
you.
You sent this to us last year and got us to work through it. I was completely surprised at actually how much had happened in the year.
Yes.
So if you
You
ask me a
forget.
question like, what was 2023 like? I would have given you, well, you know, it was the year my mom got sick and she was diagnosed with cancer and she passed away and this and a little bit about that. But then, and maybe I remember 1 or 2 more things, but the process of, I remember now looking back and thinking like month by month, week by week, all the things that happened. It's like, oh my goodness, this was a full year.
Yeah, it's funny how much you actually forget in a year. So this is just a tool that helps you to look back and reflect well, and then it actually sets you up. It helps you to look forward.
And
Set some
there's
goals.
a gem inside there as well, because that is what the practice of gratitude does. So as a spiritual practice, practicing gratitude encourages you to look back and reflect through all the moments to find things you can be grateful for. So by doing that, you can quickly say, well, I haven't got anything to be grateful for in this season because it's just been such a tough year. But if you take time out to reflect, you can actually find many things to be grateful for. And see, okay, here I can see God was at work here in this conversation, in this moment, through this experience. Here's where something happened. So you see the thread of God working in your life rather than just in the things that you can remember.
Yeah, even in your toughest year, there are things, there are moments. That time somebody just gave me a word of encouragement or whatever. So we can share the link into the bio
we'll
here.
put it in the notes, in the show notes.
In the show notes. Well,
In the
that
show
sounds
notes.
fancy.
Leroy's going to put it in the show notes.
And so you can have a digital version or you can print out a version. There's probably other things. I've just been using this one for a few years and it's great. But maybe you just want to sit with your journal and write down and reflect what God has done, what He said, and then to look forward. I think, what is that expression that we are met by our level of expectation? So if you just roll into another year like, oh, this is going to be another year, you have no expectation, no hope, no desire for the year ahead. You just roll into the year and without expectation, you don't see the miracles unfold in front of you. But actually, when you look towards a year with expectation in your heart, I believe this year is going to be a year that God is going to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Or I am going to fill in the blank.
So it's like this idea, like expectation drives some enthusiasm and anticipation for the year that's to come.
Yeah, and then when you have an expectation, I don't think that there's ever been a year that God hasn't blown my expectations out of the water.
Yeah.
And so now, when you come into a year with expectation, you can think, well, this is my expectation. Let's watch what God is going to do.
Yeah.
And then you see miracles unfold in front of you.
Yeah, incredible. Wow. Okay, cool. So I remember just thinking back on this time last year, some of those questions in the year compass are like pretty intense. So just an encouragement, if you give it a go and start, like don't give up.
Yeah.
Book out a couple of hours to work through it, because
I actually don't do it in one sitting.
Yeah, that's
I do it now over December. So I've got it. I'm going to print it out this morning, and then I take an hour every couple of days, and then by January I've got something.
Yeah. Hey, amazing. That's cool. Hey, well, that's it for today. We're going to leave it there for Thursday Thoughts. But excited for the weekend. Dream Team celebration. Friday evening, Dina's coming up from Cape Town to be with us with all of our volunteers. And just there as well, seeing incredible growth within that the Dream Team at Free Church. So over 200 people, I think close to 240 people on the Dream Team at the moment,
Amazing.
which is just amazing. So this is just a chance to celebrate,
connect, have fun,
and share some stories and
reflect
on some of the things that have happened, what God has done.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. Okay, cool.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next week.